Okay, my big muscular friend, I saw you the other night on Jimmy Kimmel, kind of making fun of me. You know, telling the whole world about how you tricked me into doing the worst movie ever made. Nah. Does it bother me? Nah. Is it burnt into my memory like a horrible scar? Nah. Sequel for you called Stop or Your Grandmother Will Beat Your Ass.
Sylvester Stallone has faced tough opponents before, but this time, his fight wasn't in the ring. It was against Hollywood's late-night king, Jimmy Kimmel.
I guess those punches Rocky took to the head were real after all.
Kimmel thought he could get away with mocking Stallone on live TV, taking cheap shots at his support for Trump and even questioning his intelligence. The crowd laughed, the cameras rolled, and Kimmel smirked, thinking he'd won. But what he didn't expect was Stallone firing back with a knockout response that didn't just shut him down, it exposed the hypocrisy of late-night TV for the world to see. So the real question is, did Kimmel just pick a fight he couldn't win?
After Stallone, it was Golf Clubber Lang's turn at the podium. You know, I keep wondering when this bromance between Trump and Elon Musk is going to blow up like a SpaceX rocket, but for now at least, it appears to be going strong.
Jimmy Kimmel has made a career out of poking fun at celebrities, politicians, and just about anyone who doesn't fit into Hollywood's carefully curated mold. But this time, he picked the wrong target. Sylvester Stallone isn't just any actor, he's a Hollywood icon. Someone who built his legacy through grit, determination, and an undeniable connection with audiences around the world. So when Kimmel decided to take a few cheap shots at him on live TV, things got ugly fast.
That he was going to change the world. Because without him, you can imagine what the world would look like. Guess what? We got the second George Washington. Congratulations!
The whole thing started when Stallone publicly praised Donald Trump, even comparing him to George Washington. Whether you agree with Stallone's opinion or not, mocking someone just because they have a different political view is a low blow. But Kimmel, known for his snarky humor, couldn't resist. During his monologue, he sarcastically quipped, "George Washington was the father of our country. Donald Trump is the father of Eric." Big difference. The audience laughed, as they always do. But the joke wasn't just about Trump. It was a clear attempt to paint Stallone as out of touch or naive for making the comparison in the first place.
I guess those punches Rocky took to the head were real after all. George Washington was the father of our country. Donald Trump is the father of Eric.
But Kimmel wasn't finished. He doubled down, taking aim at Stallone's most famous role, Rocky Balboa. He joked, "I guess those punches Rocky took to the head were real after all," implying that Stallone's cognitive abilities had been affected by years of playing a boxer wasn't just an insult, it was a direct attack on his intelligence. The message was clear. Stallone wasn't just wrong for supporting Trump, he was incapable of forming a rational opinion. For a guy like Stallone, who has spent decades inspiring audiences with stories of perseverance and resilience, this wasn't just another late-night joke, this was an attempt to publicly humiliate him. The problem is, Kimmel assumed that Stallone would just shrug it off, that he'd stay quiet and take the hit like so many other Hollywood figures who are afraid to push back against the late-night echo chamber. Sylvester Stallone has never been the kind of guy to sit back and take hits without swinging back. He built his career playing tough, no-nonsense characters who fight against the odds, and in real life, he's no different. After Jimmy Kimmel's on-air jabs, many people probably expected Stallone to brush it off or ignore it altogether, but that's not his style. Instead of staying silent, he did what he does best. He turned the situation into something even bigger.
Nah. Does it bother me? Nah. Is it burnt into my memory like a horrible scar? Nah. Well, maybe just a little bit.
Rather than responding with anger, Stallone hit back with humor, sarcasm, and that unmistakable charm that has made him a legend. Taking to social media, he addressed Kimmel's remarks in the best way possible. Does it bother me? Nah. Does it burn into my memory like a horrible scar? Nah, well, maybe just a little bit. With just a few words, he let everyone know that while he wasn't exactly losing sleep over Kimmel's jokes, he wasn't going to let them slide either.
Oh, did I say that? And I've decided to write a sequel called, for you, called Stop or Your Grandmother Will Beat Your Ass. And I will be directing and producing.
But he didn't stop there. Stallone has always been great at flipping the script, and this time was no different. Instead of just clapping back, he turned Kimmel's own joke on its head in a way that made the late-night host look even more ridiculous. "I have decided to write a sequel for you called Stop or Your Grandmother Will Beat Your Ass," he joked, referencing his 1992 film Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, a movie that Kimmel himself had mocked in the past. It was the perfect comeback. Not only was Stallone throwing a jab back at Kimmel, but he was also exposing how predictable and unoriginal Kimmel's humor really is. What made Stallone's response so brilliant was that he didn't need to get nasty or defensive. He didn't have to resort to insults or over-the-top outrage. Instead, he did what he's always done. He let his wit and authenticity do the talking. In an industry where most celebrities either play it safe or let their PR teams handle their public image, Stallone stood his ground in a way that felt real, and people loved it. Sylvester Stallone's response to Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just about defending himself, it was about exposing something much bigger. This wasn't just a petty exchange between two famous people, it was a perfect example of how Hollywood's late-night culture has become predictable, one-sided, and frankly, exhausting.
And it kind of tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump. He wrote this because he was upset I didn't mention him on the show, and no one mentioned him on the show. He wasn't getting any attention. He couldn't stand it.
Late-night talk shows used to be about entertainment, comedy, and real conversations. But over the years, they've turned into something else entirely. Instead of welcoming different viewpoints and having meaningful discussions, these shows have become echo chambers, where hosts take cheap shots at anyone who doesn't align with the mainstream Hollywood narrative. Stallone's support for Trump made him an easy target, but the bigger problem is that this is part of a pattern. Late-night hosts rarely engage with opposing opinions in a fair or balanced way. Instead, they mock, ridicule, and move on, never giving the person they're attacking a real chance to respond.
Okay, my big muscular friend, I saw you the other night on Jimmy Kimmel.
The formula is painfully obvious. A celebrity or public figure says something that goes against Hollywood's unwritten rules. The late-night host picks up on it, cracks a joke at their expense, and the audience laughs because they're supposed to. The show moves on, and the cycle repeats. It's not about humor anymore. It's about pushing a specific viewpoint while making sure anyone who disagrees looks foolish. And the worst part? It's completely staged. The audience knows when to laugh, the script is pre-approved, and the punchlines are safe. That's exactly what happened with Stallone. Instead of engaging with what he said, Kimmel went straight for the easy laugh. He didn't challenge Stallone's views, didn't invite him for a real discussion, he just threw out a few jokes, waited for the applause, and moved on. Stallone's response called that out for what it was: lazy, predictable, and most importantly, an attempt to control the conversation. Sylvester Stallone didn't just stop at calling out Jimmy Kimmel, he took the conversation even further, exposing an issue that has been bothering a lot of people for years: censorship in Hollywood. During follow-up interviews and podcasts, he spoke openly about how the entertainment industry has changed, and not for the better.
They had an America First gala at Mar-a-Lago, of course, where Trump got an introduction from none other than the Italian stallion himself.
Hollywood used to be a place where bold ideas thrived, where filmmakers and actors took risks to tell stories that pushed boundaries. That's how we got legendary movies like Rocky, First Blood, and so many other classics that didn't follow a safe, pre-approved formula. But Stallone made it clear that those days are slipping away. The industry has become obsessed with following trends, playing it safe, and making sure no one is offended. He even pointed out that Rocky, one of the greatest underdog stories of all time, probably wouldn't even be made today. Why? Because it doesn't fit into the modern Hollywood mold. It's raw, it's emotional, and it tells the story of a guy who fights against all odds to prove himself. There are no corporate agendas, no forced narratives, just an authentic, inspiring story. And that's exactly the kind of movie that Hollywood seems to be moving away from. Stallone's take on the industry struck a chord with a lot of people. Fans and even fellow actors agreed that Hollywood has lost something important: creative freedom. Instead of allowing artists to tell real, meaningful stories, studios and networks are more focused on producing safe content that won't stir controversy. The result? A lot of movies and TV shows feel manufactured, predictable, and completely disconnected from real life. If you enjoyed watching Sylvester Stallone rip Jimmy Kimmel apart, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because trust me, this saga is far from over.